I have a message that comes from a lived experience in God's amazing grace. I believe that God's grace is amazing, trustworthy, and life-changing for the better. And I just wanted to approach it through a way that starts off by acknowledging my Pacific Islander heritage. Is that okay? Because we don't usually migrate to the East Coast, so I thought I'd bring a little bit of the flavor of the Pacific. Come on. So I want y'all to learn about a red flower. It's actually a flower tree, and it is called Fepulea'i. I think you see it on the screen. For those who really care, it's called Metrosideros polymorpha, yes, to others in another language. This is a really important tree to the native Hawaiians especially, and also to Pacific Islanders that span from Hawaii through all the way to the south in Aotearoa, another name for New Zealand, because this flower tree is the first to rise from the ashes. In our volcanic islands, there will be a season of complete decimation somewhere in the island or in a complete portion of one maybe smaller island. And especially in Hawaii, on the Big Island, I know some of y'all went there for vacation this summer. I'm glad you came back safely. I got to see you, I got to talk with you, and Hawaii is known for nature. And this is a lesson that I take from nature. That there is life, there is hope for life, even after burnout. Complete ashes, what if there is beauty? Not just life and meager life, but what if there's beauty in life? What if it's possible for Fepulea'i to be the first to rise from the ashes? What if there's beauty after burnout? And I experienced a burnout that was very severe in ministry that I became so passionate when I got much better years later that I made this the topic of my second master's thesis, and right now, I don't know why I do this to myself. After I finish one academic program, I say never again. And now I'm writing on burnout again in my doctoral dissertation, specifically looking at rest practices and how it intersects with occupational burnout. So when I was going through a severe burnout experience, my mind was less than, and my body was telling on me. I would preach, and then I'd end up in the emergency room. No one else needed to know. I mean, that's what I thought. Now, looking back, I wish I had spoken more and more often. I would be with the paramedics in my home in the morning and later on teach prayer meeting. And so actually, when I was interviewing for New Hope earlier this year, there was a similar sermon series that touched on burnout. Well, I heard Pastor Chelsea speak on burnout. And I remember from across the continent, I said, all right, Lord, when are we going? This is a community of faith that is addressing a real felt practical need. Am I right? This is something that we've all experienced: stress, exhaustion, burnout. But this message in particular, as we close our sermon series on toast, I want to lean a little more to inspire those who are so burnt out that where do you find the energy when you're utterly exhausted to learn how to better manage your energy? Because you're already burnt out. Or how, if you're utterly exhausted already, do you find the time when you're burnt out because you don't have time? Or so it seems. So this message in particular, I hope, will inspire all of us, but will also be special hope for those who are already so burnt out. And I brought my handkerchief, but I think I'm okay, just in case. I remember I prayed a little prayer, and it was about just, God, I don't see a way out. In fact, I think I'm the common denominator of the issues that seem to be piling up. Whatever hope I have left, I'm going to hold on to it, but I don't know how much I have left, God. And so I prayed a very intentional prayer. The words were chosen carefully. I said, God who made me, God who is love. I didn't say Jesus because my faith was also severely burning out. Can I be real? Am I the only one? Can I be real? Sometimes when we physically, mentally burn out, our faith with God can burn out too. And I said, God who made me, it's what I have left. God who made me and God who is love, if you are out there. If you are out there. May I also add, just to be more self-incriminating on my first sermon, that I was already a pastor for several years in the Christian faith. I said, if you are out there, thank you. Help. Amen. God who made me and is love. That was really important because God who made me would know me, and God who is love is the kind of God I'd want to talk to and get help from. God who made me and is love. If you're out there, thank you and help. I pray for that. I pray for you, anyone who needs that prayer. You can go ahead and take that. Full copyright, no copyrights. Just take it. And slowly yet surely, something began to happen, but I'm telling you, it was no one singular heroic moment. It was probably just a series of putting one foot in front of the other. And so, for those who are wondering, I wonder with you, what if there is a way out, but, or and, the way out is the way through? Because all I really can see going back, yes, is God's amazing grace while I'm just putting one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. What if there is a way out, the way out being the way through? Because burnout, this is according to the APA manual, burnout is exhaustion accompanied by three specific characteristics, right? You've heard several definitions from Pastor Andre, Pastor Mike. Exhaustion accompanied by decreased motivation, lowered performance, and negative attitudes. And so this, again, is where if my motivation is already severely decreased, right? How much do I have left to make a big change in my life so that I recover from burnout and recover well? If my performance is already lowered, what is left to be so practical with that I could manage going through, say, step-by-step instructions on how to get through burnout and get through it quickly? Because number three, my attitude, if I'm severely burnt out, is severely negative, okay? And so one of the most practical things, bear with me, is actually for us to begin looking at something that is called grace. And I believe that's something that we can offer Christians, I'm speaking about, to the world in a very special way. If I'm giving you a definition on burnout, I'm giving you a definition on grace. Is that all right? Grace. When I'm talking about it today, let's just say it's favor. It's like someone who likes you, right? It's favor for you, for us, but especially the kind of favor that you can't earn can't work for. The Bible puts it this way. In Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 to 9, it says, it's this kind of grace. It's for by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. And when I was in that predicament, and I would venture to say, if anyone is at their wit's end, where you find yourself in that dilemma, right, on the horns of a dilemma, I would love to manage my time better and manage my energy better and be wiser about things and stand up and say no, right? Amen. And what do you do when you're severely, utterly at your wit's end? Decreased performance, lowered motivation, negative attitude. This is where, hallelujah, maybe this is the place where God's amazing grace comes in. And it's a gift, and it's not of your own doing. So if you feel like you really don't have much left to do too much, remember, I just look back on that prayer and I said, God, I don't have much hope to hold on to, but whatever I have left, I'm not gonna throw it away. God who made me and is love, if you're out there, thank you, please help. And I believe that I'm standing here today because that God helped. But here's a little challenge. What if God's grace takes time? What if God's grace isn't like this heroic rush in and save the day, instant kind of fix it? Because it wasn't for me, and as I research it, the data points show it takes a long time to recover from systemic, pervasive ailments, and burnout is one of them. So what if the grace that comes in is actually rhythmically unhurried, not rushed, but also not delayed? Okay. So you've heard this saying, right? Like when someone gets sick, they say, get well, and what's the third word? Get well soon. Good. Well, what if I need to get well slowly? And it especially comes to a kind of humorous light when it's your boss texting you, get well soon. Hope you recover really well soon. But what if God's text message, right? What if God's message is permissive for getting well soon as well as, when needed, slowly? What if God is not too in a rush and not too unhurried, not because God can't be swift, but because we could use someone like that, able to take the pace of me and you as people? There's something that I did, before I became a church family ministries pastor. I served as 13 years in Loma Linda, California, Orange County, and then 10 years in Loma Linda, California as young adult pastor. And I did more funerals than weddings. That's a good thing, right? One of the things that I would do often, and by the way, it was very interesting because always the pastor for the wedding, not the bride. And it would intrigue me that these young adults would choose me. I don't have a marriage family therapy degree. I don't have any personal experience in sacred matrimony, lived experience. But I think it had more to do with the journeying together. As these couples would get to know each other, here was a pastor who was a trusted friend and someone that you would want to invite maybe to your wedding party. I think that's what it was, more so than my academic, professional, and personal qualifications. I think it had a lot to do with relational connection. And so this past weekend, I got to officiate a wedding for a very special couple, and they were the last couple I had said yes to, and I got permission and okays to go back and do this in California. Super cool story, let's talk about it later. But I want to bring up to you the vow that I get to officiate, and this one is specifically straight from last Sunday. I stand in the middle and I say, do you, Robert, take Lauren to be your wife? Shout out if you're watching, Robert and Lauren. Do you, Robert, take Lauren to be your wife, and do you covenant by God's, grace, before God and these witnesses to be her loving and faithful husband, and to love, honor, cherish, and protect her in plenty and want, in joy and sorrow, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live. There is no asterisk in that vow. Because imagine if there was, like, asterisk, in joy and in sorrow, in sickness and in health, asterisk, short-term sickness only, get well soon. The end date in that sacred vow, right, that makes marriage, the love in the context of marriage, so special and sacred. This, as long as you both shall live. As long as you both shall live. What a holy vow to enter into. There's no asterisk. And I wonder if I accept the pace of grace in my life, how that would transform me. How would it change us to accept and adopt God's rhythms of grace, where there's no asterisk in God's promise that God cares? What if I align myself to the unhurried rhythms of Jesus? How would that help me recover well and prevent further burnout? How would my current rhythms, how would ours, and I'm inviting us to reflect even as you're listening, how if these rhythms of unhurried grace were to be a part of the structure of my everyday life, how would it change me? And maybe it has to do with slowing down a little bit, because I heard an ad yesterday. Literally, I kid you not, as I was preparing for this sermon, I was listening to other sermons so that I can get in the headspace. And this ad, you know, when you're like just listening to something online and you just don't want the interruption, but then this ad comes on. But this ad caught my attention as I was tuning it out. Escape to your dream destination, Fiji. And I chuckled because it's actually one of the Pacific Islands that I grew up in. And Fiji is not a vacation destination for me. Fiji, growing up there for 5 years as a preteen and early teen, some of the ages of the kids that I now pastor and am so pleased to serve, Fiji's not an escape in my book and experience. Fiji was a place that I called home. So what if the Fijis in our lives were no longer an escape destination? But what if the Fiji rhythms that we want and long for become home, sustained? Vacations are temporary, but a major move is sustained, like that life change. When we moved to Fiji in my 5th grade, we didn't use credit cards. We sold everything we had. The cost is a little bit different. I didn't go for 2 weeks and then come back with souvenirs from Fiji. I said goodbye to family and friends. The cost was different to make this major life move. And what if part of recovering well from utter exhaustion and the stressors in our life, what if part of that calls for major move, a structural change in the rhythms of our current life? Vacationing is temporary, moving is sustained, and therefore it requires building a life for the long haul. Maybe it looks like when your kids come to you and you start practicing, if you haven't yet, slowing down enough to be unhurried to receive that favor, that grace from your child, right? Slowing down enough to have a rhythm of rest that isn't just on vacation during that one season and unique time that you're, said person, you, me, are available, but actually making rhythms of slowing down enough to be loved by grace, familiar, repeated, and regular. Making rhythms of rest as familiar and cherished as home. Here's the thing. Rest is actually not the antidote to burnout. Brené Brown talks about it. She's quoting from David Whyte's work in poetry. And it's something I agree with. And I am doing specifically research on at the intersection of rest practices and burnout. Rest is not the antidote to burnout. She goes on to say it's wholeheartedness. Wholeheartedness cannot be hurried into, right? So rest is imperative as a vehicle to get us into that place of refreshment. Why? Because when we make rhythms of rest a part of our structural everyday life, we are slowing down enough, and that's the pace that allows us, I think, to truly reflect and recalibrate to what's wholeheartedly meaningful in life. That's how we get to refreshment. So maybe God's rhythms of grace really can help us prevent burnout and recover well. But I have a little story to close some of our time with, to just kind of put flesh on it. You see, even though it took seriously, just like one day at a time, several years, we're talking 3 years probably, just to even get back to not feeling overwhelmingly burnt out, and then taking several years after that to feel at prime again. There was a moment, even in that long journey, that I remember distinctly, April 2017. And it was the way that I attribute it to God saving me from the worst outcomes of burnout, which include suicidal ideation that leads to death. Remember, some of the reasons why I take this so seriously is because not only do we burn out in our work, but we can burn out to our most loved ones around us and those relationships. It'll affect us in the most personal and precious ways, including our faith with God. If you're already in a faith walk with the Lord, burnout is so pervasive, it can get there. And it can also get to the point of existing, being threatened. And so it is an important work to address, to talk about, to preempt, and maybe also why I advocate for us to just reflect. What would it look like if I were to adopt God's rhythms of grace more in my everyday life? Because when I was taking one step at a time, one day at a time through severe burnout in my ministry, And I was consistently, as much as possible, praying that short, simple prayer in the private places. I remember my body was getting sick, so sick. Doctors didn't really know what to do. And in fact, I got to the one point where a doctor suggested I would undergo a surgical invasive procedure, and they wouldn't necessarily know what was going on, but at least they'd get a better chance at finding out. And it involved in signing off permission for them to take a few organs. Okay, I was like, maybe let me just go pray again. And I was really thankful the doctor wasn't like rushing me and that there was that option, because not everyone gets the option to think about a very life-altering procedure. And so I went, and I honestly didn't really have much energy to pray more than what I was already praying. So I was just buying time or killing it. And slowly I was actually getting discouraged. This seemed to be the only way out, and it didn't seem very bright. And I remember going to Target to buy, this is how burnt out I was, guys. I went to Target to buy garlic bread. Like, there's other places to buy garlic bread, but don't hate on the person who's buying garlic bread from their nearest grocery store, which requires low energy. I can remember parking, and my mom, hi mom, you're in the crowd today, love you. She was in the car with me as we parked. She looked at me and she said, hey, before you go, I actually have something to tell you. I've been praying for you. And I actually got the sense, I think I heard from God, just this peace that everything is gonna be okay. I was praying about you. I looked at her, and guys, this is how utterly exhausted someone near you may also be right now. And a heart of compassion will go a long way to allow them to get well slowly. Because I looked at my mom and I said, oh, I'm so glad you have that confidence. And I got out and went and got my garlic bread. Reached for the freezer. Not like, I'm sure there's a fresh bakery section there too, but I went for the freezer, opened up the door, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I don't answer unknown numbers, but for some reason, it says like, sometimes it tells you where it's coming from. And I don't know why, guys, I'm gonna be very specific. I know we're online, but it said Tennessee, and I thought it was Dave Ramsey calling me. What? So I look at my phone and I'm like, oh, tennis. Oh, okay. Hello? It was my surgeon. It was my doctor who was a surgeon, who was a surgeon. I had visited him at 20 years of age, okay? Y'all are trying to add it up, 2017 and 20. It was a long time. At 20 years of age, years prior, I had seen him once at the counsel of someone who knew someone who knew someone who knew him. And at the moment that my mom said that, I reached for the door to get the garlic bread. My phone rang, unknown number, Tennessee, hello. This voice said, hey, I was just going through the papers on my desk. I'm clearing them. Remember how long ago it had been. I'm just going through the papers on my desk, and I'm just seeing your name, your contact. I hadn't changed my number. I just want to know, how's it going? I said, it's gotten so much worse. And I think it's been exacerbated because I've been under chronic stress. I'm burnt out, and now the doctors are telling me this, and I'm supposed to have a surgery on that date, signing off these organs. Immediately, I hear just a little, not too much, hope. I hear a little hope in the words that he says next. Okay, this is what you're gonna do, he says. Change your insurance. I'm gonna do your surgery. I know exactly what they're saying, why they're saying you need to sign off the organs, but here's the thing. he tells me that he is award-winning in a new technology that would not require me to have that signature. I could keep my organs. That sounds so weird. Guys, talk to me later. And I do just that. It is a moment, but it is a moment in the bigger picture of it took me a while to get to that garlic bread freezer door, okay? And you might not be there in front of the freezer door where your mom tells you she's heard from the Lord, or someone that you love has been praying for you, and there's evidence that God does care and has heard your prayers. Maybe you're not there yet. Remember, that moment came in the context of just taking one step at a time, because God's grace slows down enough to take those steps alongside. I believe maybe God's rhythms of grace really can help us prevent burnout and recover well, both soon and slowly. The psalmist says in chapter 73, verse 26, "My health may fail, and my spirit may grow weak, but God remains the strength of my heart. God is mine," no asterisk, forever. I had the surgery. The promises were good, but they were also a little better. The surgery cost me nothing. This surgeon did an entire award-winning procedure at no charge financially to me. Miracles, a million little miracles. When you're taking a million little steps, those steps count too. And the grace of God, maybe, even though it's slower than our reference point, maybe the rhythms of God's grace can be absolutely life-changing too. My health may fail, my spirit may grow weak, but God remains the strength of my heart. God is mine forever.